Hey, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming back. I mean, the last time that we had you on, you actually shared some information about look, even if you invest now, get something if you don't plan on living in it, but just get something in this market. And that really spoke to me. I took your advice. I bought a condo in
Woo.
December before the market even went up more. So
Yes.
just thank you for coming on. I know you have always some great tips for our audience out here around real estate. Let's talk a little bit more about who you are before we get into all of that.
Yes, definitely. So I am Gusti Clark. I'm the property princess, and I am with Keller Williams Greater Seattle, and I focus on residential real estate. So that's what I do. And I also do coaching around investments as well.
Yeah. Well, we understand that real estate is a huge investment for
Mm.
most families in America. I mean, unless you really got it like that and you're paying out of pocket, no mortgage necessary and all that. But for many of our families, this is the biggest purchase that they'll make in their lifetime. So tell us
That's
about the
right.
tips you're here to share with us.
Definitely. So, the main thing that I'd love to talk about today is how to leverage real estate to build wealth. So, we're always talking about, oh, yes, let's build wealth, but let's talk about the hows to actually do that and how to leverage real estate to get you there.
Yeah, this is important because I think a lot of people see it as one of those huge things. It's like, oh, I don't even know where to start. I don't know where to go. But I love the fact that we do have a lot of people coming from our community who are experts in the real estate market that are now sharing those tips and tricks. You have some slides you want to make sure we get into today. Go ahead.
Yes, of course, I have slides. I like to be prepared because we're talking about money, and money is important and we want to get it right. Okay, so one of the first things I always like to think about is what is our relationship to money? What's our mindset around money? So, for example, years ago, back when I lived in San Francisco, I'd be like, okay, I'm working towards paying down all of my credit cards. I'm going to pay them down. I feel so proud of myself. But then 3 weeks later, I see a trip to Mexico,
Yeah.
that's on sale. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to treat myself, right? Because I didn't have a plan with my money or what I wanted to do with it. I just thought, okay, well, having a job and making a good income is enough. But clearly that's not enough. Just in the past 2 years alone, we've seen how everything has changed and our jobs could go away or just different things. So we have to be able to live on our investments. So that's what I want to talk about, starting with real estate.
Yeah.
Right. So, a couple of things about that is, we keep thinking and hearing about inflation. We go to the grocery store and everything is so much more expensive now. And one of the ways to kind of get around inflation is to focus on real estate and to basically park our money in real estate. So, um, in the recent months, a lot of us have been focused on maybe the stock markets or even cryptocurrency, Bitcoin and Dogecoin and all that good stuff, but then it tanked, right? And it was an easier bar to get into with those kinds of investments. But now it's like, well, those have tanked. Now, what are we going to do? So, again, focusing on real estate. When you own a piece of property, that's a way to hedge against inflation. Why? Because as everything else increases, so does the value of your property.
Yeah, this is something that a lot of people I think are just now really getting to understand. And I love how you talked about the difference between investing in real estate versus investing in some things that do crash. I mean, those actually have more of a propensity for you to lose your money on your investment. And for many of our families out here, I mean, that's just not an option.
It's not. And then what are we going to do to have and to fall back on, right? So it's not just, oh, buy a piece of property for yourself to just live in and sit and hold on to, which you can, and our money grows that way. But it's how do we take that money to continue to leverage up over time, right?
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, it's really, you're talking about your assets creating more assets.
Oh, yes.
This is something that I've heard in the language of money and financial wealth and building that wealth, right? I mean, when you're talking about the level of an investor, that's really at the top tier of where we want to kind of get to when we're talking about our money. You can be an employee, you can be a solopreneur, you can actually be, own a corporation, but to get to that level of investor, that's when your money is working for you.
That's right. So hard assets is exactly where we want to be. So Trey, can you imagine $2,500 being deposited into your account every single month by just sleeping and waking up and doing what you do every single day? Passive income.
Yeah.
That's what we really want to get to. So when we own a piece of property, there's a lot of different things that we can do with it. So one of the things is buy and hold, meaning buy and hold it for yourself. If after a year or 2 years, you want to take the equity, you can take that and leverage it into another property, like a rental property or whatever the case is. I have a client that I helped buy a piece of property up in Everett, and a year and a half later, there's $100,000 in equity in that home that he can take now and do whatever it is he needs to do with it, whether he wants to take out that money to remodel his own home, add more value, or go buy more property. But again, that's how we're leveraging our money. The other thing that you can do is buy and then rent. So even if you wanted to buy a home but didn't want to live in it, like in a different part of our state or even in a different state altogether, you can buy and rent that out to long-term tenants. You're getting paid every single month by just holding on to this. Later you can sell it, or later you can take that equity and leverage that into the next thing. The third thing that we could also do with it is house hacking. That's my favorite thing. My most recent favorite things is the house hacking idea, in that you buy a piece of property and in the backyard, maybe you add an ADU, which is an accessory dwelling unit, or like a little tiny home, and you can rent that out for the short-term rentals, or even like the downstairs, you can kind of convert that. So there's a lot of ways that we can make our properties make money for us, not just holding on to it and kind of just paying a mortgage, but there's so many ways to do that. I do talk about that in one of my upcoming workshops, where we spend a lot more time digging into all of those things.
Yeah, this is really exciting. I mean, this is some of the things that we were working on in community, right? Because we had a lot of homeowners in the Central District, Black homeowners in particular, and they're trying to find ways to keep their properties. And so ADUs was a huge topic we've been covering over the last few years, just getting people to understand that, there's a way that you can take some of the equity out and build something that then is providing additional income for you to deal with the increase in property taxes, and to deal with, some of the other things that you may need in terms of, fixing up the home and things like that. But there's also these programs throughout the city of Seattle in particular around weatherization, and around, hey, maybe we have some funds that are grant funds, or, very low interest loans that you can get to actually build these kind of things in your home. So I love hearing that. But we also know that a lot of people are like, well, what about, the Airbnb, how do I get involved in that? And that's another part of house hacking, right?
Oh, yes. Airbnb, those are my favorite, or VRBO. There's so many different types of platforms that can help you do that. And there are companies that can help manage it for you. So here we go to work every single day, and you're probably wondering, okay, I'd like to do that, but how exactly? Well, there's also other people who can help you do that. So we want to leverage people as well. People capital, not just the money parts, but that's how you're able to manage different things, or you can have multiple properties at once while you still do your day job.
Yeah. So you have some workshops where people can learn more about these tips and tricks. I think that's important, because I think sometimes it's the accessibility.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are giving a very brief overview over this, but I love that you're saying, no, I actually am out in community, making sure that people understand all of these facets to how they can utilize their wealth in their home, right?
Right. We can dive way deeper into these topics. But another thing that a lot of people may not know is that even as a renter, if you've never owned a home, you can still leverage real estate to help make you money without having to have bought the property. So it's other things that we can talk about. But my point is, there's so much opportunity to use real estate to get you to your financial goals. This is everything that I sit down and talk with my clients about, trying to figure out, where are you now in terms of where your finances stand, where you want to be, and then we're going to build a bridge to help you get there. So that's what we do.
Well, I appreciate this concept of, not knowing, or getting a clearer understanding of what to do with your money.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, for me as a new homeowner, I'm dealing with like, okay, let me look up certain videos, because I had to like fix the doors in my, in my unit, and all these things. And I'm like, oh, there's nobody to call for that. I have to actually know what I'm doing, or have the right connections. I think sometimes, that's another layer of this when you're talking about how to leverage things. It's those connections.
Oh, yes. Connections are a huge deal in helping us manage our assets, right? Whatever that may be, especially with the repairs. And that's definitely something that I help my clients out with. And, thinking about people who do currently own homes and they're possibly considering selling, or even taking the equity out, there are programs that can help you to update your home, fix and repair things without having to come out of pocket all the time. That's not the case. There's so many options around this. I get excited talking about it, because there's just so much that you can do.
Yeah, this is where I think sometimes they really need an expert like yourself to really guide them through it. Because I know for me, trying to research everything and go through everything personally,
Daunting.
yeah, that's exactly right. It reminds me of all this information that was coming out around COVID, and people were like, "Well, we don't know where to go, and do I get a test? Do I need to do this, and where do I go?" But this is very, very key when we're talking about the real estate market. Again, real estate has been one of the oldest ways that people have built generational wealth. So, Gusti, tell us, is there anything that we're leaving off the table?
So speaking of which, we all look at interest rates these days and it's like, oh, the interest rates are starting to go up, home prices are starting to go up. But in all technical terms, in the last 10 years, this is the lowest. The last 20 years, this is the lowest interest rates. It used to be around 6% or even more than that. So technically, we're still doing good, even though it's a little bit more than it was right during the pandemic. So still, it's really a good time to try to jump into the real estate game, however you're able to do that. Whether it's with several people that you're combining to go after an investment with, or on your own, whichever the case is, you can still do it. So I think I have a slide somewhere about the current housing market in Seattle, and you'll see that the the average is around 760, right up around the 800s for the homes. But what we want to think about is, are there other areas, or like I said, do we want to partner with somebody else to go after these different types of investments and things like that? Still, real estate always gives us the return over time. For all these decades, you can see the returns that it continues to give year after year. So again, it's a great way to park your money. For example, if you happen to have 30,000 and maybe you have 30,000 in your 401k, instead of leaving it there where it could tank like it did 2 years ago at the start of the pandemic, instead of leaving it there, you can dump it into, or park it rather, into real estate, and then it's growing exponentially for you. Like I said, when we start with real estate, it's paying us in return. So if you're receiving the $2,500 a month check, or even $5,000, however much is your choice, but when we're receiving that, now that pays for our daily bills or our expenses. So now our salaries can help us to leverage, we can use that money to leverage in other areas. So that's really the name of the game, is how do we create cash flow? Real estate helps us do that.
I love how you were talking about different locations in other areas. I mean, I think that we are seeing a growth in our transportation systems that actually mean that eventually, when those big systems are up and running, that's going to create additional income, additional property value to your properties. And so even thinking about that, I think is so key here, Gusti. I just always appreciate when you come on, because you give us tips and tricks. If people want to reach out to you and get connected, please look right there. Let them know how they can reach out to you and come to one of these workshops you're hosting.
Yes. Hey, everybody. So Gusti Clark, the property princess, you can reach me at www.gusticlark.com. That's my website. And on my website, you'll see the different links to the workshops. I have one coming up March 15th, and that's the Sellers Workshop, where I'll have tax professionals with us so we can talk through what needs to happen if you were to consider selling, or if you want to take your equity out and start to leverage that into something else. But we get to talk about that and spend time to really kind of dig in and what that's like. If you are interested in being a buyer and buying more properties, we can certainly talk about that too. So on the screen, there's a little QR code, so go ahead and scan, and you can add your information, and we'll get you signed up for the workshop. It's virtual, and it's 6 to 7:30 on March 15th.
Wow, Gusti, always a wealth of knowledge in the real estate game.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being on the Morning
Thank you.
Update show today. It's great to have you in the Black Media Matter studio.
Yes, thank you. This is great.